Echo, echo, anyone there? I don't even know if YouTube pushes out lives to anybody's feeds anymore, to be honest. But I'm going live anyway, because that's what I felt like doing today. How's it going, man? No agenda today. Nothing in particular to talk about. I just felt like streaming, seeing what everyone's up to. And if there's something to talk about, we'll talk about it. We'll get down to the heart of it, the truth of it, you know? There's some news out, something concerning, anything important, that's my specialty. I'm not afraid of the truth. That's the one gift God gave to me, was the ability to look at something objectively and non-objectively, honestly, and and to dissect it and just to see it for how it should be seen, truthfully. Yeah, man. It was a passion, you know. The passion for truth is still there. The passion to be honest is still there. But you know the saying, beating a dead horse with a stick? I think I really beat that horse to a pulp with my videos. I really threw my passion into that. I dove into it. I obsessed over um speaking the truth that wasn't being heard. It wasn't allowed, and I think people are starting to see things a little bit differently now. We're in a totally different environment from when I started doing Tyranny Unmasked about 7 years ago. I think it was 7 years ago. It was actually, it's been 5, 6, 7. It's been 8 years now. 8 years since I started the channel, and we were covering big news headlines. The very first one that I hopped on was um the downing of the Russian plane over Turkey. And where it stands right now with politics, it really is the same game over and over and over again. So where I was really getting into it back then, where I was seeing all of this for the first time because I hadn't been exposed to the insanity which is media, it was really damning to me. I was like, holy shit, why is no one noticing this? And I think a lot of the reason is that we get so comfortable in just accepting that, accepting how broken and how fucked up our reality is. It is a really superficial reality. And because of that, because everyone sees the superficiality and they just accept the superficiality, they're very afraid to go beyond and break a wall between someone else, a person to person, that they have to go online to online forums just to feel like they can speak the truth or just be genuine. It's it, it really is a reality that we're dealing with. And hey, Paul, and again, hey, Stagel, it's good to hear from you guys. Just just on here chatting, just chatting for the sake of chatting and connecting with people if they're here to connect. That's what we're here for right now. No real time limit, no agenda, and anything you bring up and you want to talk about or you're concerned about, feel free to ask. I really like chatting with people about things that are concerning to them because honestly, anything that is of concern to the mind, to me, can be dissected and pulled apart, and we can find some common ground in there to find a better perspective, honestly. Also, because we see so much of it, it becomes mind numbing. We aren't meant to see so many changes at once like we do today. Really, yeah, the internet generation, this is, we're not even a full human lifetime into the exposure of the internet. This generation that is under me, I'm very young. I'm still in my 20s, believe it or not. I started this channel before I was even 20. That's how woke, if you can even say it. I was just genuine. I just didn't realize how um conditioned everyone was. I just didn't understand it. Um but sitting here in my 20s, and the generation under me are completely saturated by the reality of everything. There's no, I have to learn from my parents, from my culture, from this or that. They have the full exposure of the world, and then that is reality to them. So we don't even know what that's going to look like. And there is a sense of burden and responsibility to try to ground that generation. So, because they will eventually be what we are now and what the generation before us was and still is. It's a non-stop thing. That's life. That's consciousness. That's being alive. It's a process, and we need to pass on the information that we learn so that we don't have fucked up scenarios that our history has proven happens when we become unconscious. So Sonic says, "Do you know the QO QO consciousness? I'm sure you might know of it. I actually don't. I know my interpretation of consciousness, but when you say QO consciousness, are you talking about something very specific, like QAnon? Is that just some extension of QO consciousness, or is that a new outlook on the term consciousness?" Sonic also says, parents today are not doing much to instill. No, they're not. They really are not. They're not mentally, physically, or spiritually. They really don't know how to pass on to our generation. They're learning just like we're learning at the same time. It's an improvement it's the burden is on us as the conscious individuals that see the problems in our world to enact on them if we really want to see that change. People are like lighthouses, is what Paul says. Some are searching for the light, some can't see the light. It's all within, like a lighthouse. I see that lighthouse. It's almost like spotlight consciousness too, because whatever you're focusing on, you also reflect that in your inner world. So let's use me as an example. I used to spend a vast majority of my day digesting the news and negative news, because that negativity is what we're drawn to like a moth. We're drawn to conflict because if we focus on conflict, we don't have to focus on the conflict in our own little circle. It's much easier to look at, like the distractions. If you're distracted on a large war, if a war in Iran, a war in Syria, a war in Ukraine, then you don't notice the war that's going on in your own home, in your own family, in your own self, your own mental, your own your own interior strength. So yeah, we are like a lighthouse. We're projecting our view onto the world, but we are also absorbing what we focus on. So basically, do you want that fuel that you have to shine your light like a lighthouse? What is it that you're shining onto the world? Because if if your lighthouse is a ultraviolet supersonic light that blinds ships on the horizon, then you're not really helping them. Whereas just a traditional lighthouse is shedding light so you are aware. Are you blinding people, or are you giving them a nice guide that they can use to navigate the waters themselves? That's the analogy that just popped up into my brain. Okay, so we're seeing Stagel asking what is that weird group around Sabtai Zevi doing these days? You know, it's interesting. Sabtai Zvi. The thing is he really represented? I think this is a perspective that I'm actually digesting right now. I've been uh, thinking about it because I was a person just like others that put a focus on Sabtai V. It's a historical figure. But personally, I don't know anything about Sabtai V. It's really the lifestyle and what that led to, and the culture around that person, that figurehead. Um, Sabtai Zevi was really like this repulsion of the strict religious sector. Like, you're so heavily religious, you're so tight on the rules that you are putting on your culture, which was like, say, Orthodox Judaism or or the Jesuit order that was going from country to country, force converting, which, I mean, even if you have the best possible outlook on a connection to a higher self, God, your inner self, or a religion that works to hold a society together, you can't force that on people. It's something that takes time and generation to integrate. So, really, Sabtai Zevi, or Zvi, represented the subconscious self, the darker self, and he just said, "Fuck it, fuck your rules, I can't follow it," and went to the most extreme evil. And we saw that being echoed in the sentiment of what the ones you can't really mention. And I think that is like a pendulum. If we try to force control our nature to such an extreme, then we have the hyper, the hyper duality going on, where on the surface we're trying to look like these super spiritual, we've got it all figured out, we never make any wrong choices, we don't have any animalistic side or nature within us. But then the reality of the nature is that that energy is still there, and instead of focusing on it, it got pushed into the subconscious. So you have all the mass satanic type rituals going on, and just the worshiping of all the subconscious self, just blindly going into lust, blindly consuming, blindly following impulse without any any higher perspective on the situation, because it was a rejection again of the hyper, I don't know why I'm using the word hyper, but the over spiritualization and the over regimentation of our world, which was seen at that time in the 16, like the path, you had the Renaissance, and then you're moving into the 1600s, and the environment is changing, and they're trying to quell all that knowledge and birth of life that was happening in the 1500s. It's that, again, it's that pendulum. You have the left, right, the yin and the yang, the there's a million ways of looking at that. And really, in the philosophy that I've approached in my life, and through the experience that I've learned from studying and looking at these extremes, is that it's important to find that balance, the balance within. So then again, when we spotlight our consciousness onto others, we're also providing a balanced perspective. But it's a good topic. I'm really glad that you guys are bringing up subjects to talk about, because this is good, good. Hey, Boomer, good questions. Yeah, we're just chilling. We're just gonna keep talking until the conversation dies, and then there's no expectations on what we're talking about. If Sonic asked about QO consciousness, if anybody knows anything about that, they can throw something in. Sonic says, I think a religion should be able to provide accurate information to present itself as a way to find purpose in our life, spirituality, with cross examination of evidence. So, yes, I do agree that that you want to be able to cross-examine things, and that is an ideal way of approaching it. But also an ideal way of approaching it is not needing a religion, because a religion it in itself then creates a box around spirituality, and spirituality is the thing that supersedes physicality, right? You have the spiritual nature, which is um, a good way of looking at it is we all have a magnetic field. We have what we would call an aura. Uh, that's not really a a spiritual thing anymore. Even science looks at it. You can observe your natural biome. It's an organic biome. Every living creature creates a magnetic field. So there is something beyond just the physical meat that we're made of, outside of ourselves, that works and coexists, and is completely necessary for the meat to work. Otherwise, it just doesn't work out. So the spiritual self is accepting that I don't know how all of this works. I don't know how I can just snag information without any preconceived context, and it's relevant to what we have to say. Like, there is a system which consciousness is a part of, and creating and generating right now as we live and breathe. And we need an outlook to understand that spirituality and just be like, okay, I accept it. I can live my life. And so, yeah, that's what religions end up being, because you can't atomize everything and cut it down to its smallest form and figure out, oh, this works because of this and that part does this thing. Um, the religion, or your practice, it should be a personal thing, in my opinion, rather than just having to believe what a group tells you to believe anyway. Um, it should be conducive and beneficial for your life. It should make your life better. So yeah, Sonic, when cross examination, yeah, you want to see the evidence. Is it evidentially providing value to your life? If it's not adding value to your life, then what is the purpose of it? Religion, Boomer says, is like a lens to see religion is like a lens to see God through. I respect that point of view. Yeah. Yeah, religion is like a lens that you can see God. Whatever your interpretation of God is, it's the higher power. Drink some water here. Hello, everyone. We're just talking about whatever. We got 15 people in here. We got straight to religion. We didn't fucks around too hard. We went right into it. I know that a great amount of the viewership on this channel over the years is heavily religious, and I know that for a fact because the comments are religiously themed, and the entirety of that time, I told everyone I'm not religious. I don't subscribe to any ideology, because I couldn't prove them to be true or false. All I know is that they work for some people and some don't work for other people. So I really tried my hardest to not um to sway anybody into believing that I was this or that. Like, I'm not Muslim, I'm not Christian, I'm not atheist, I'm not even spiritual per se. I just I'm just a realist. I see and I observe, and I do observe things that people can call supernatural, and those things are what usually lead you to believing in a religion in the first place, because you see something that's outside of science or the typical explained view that society offers you. So now you need a different explanation so that you can feel comfortable accepting that this impossibility happened in your life. So yeah, that happens for everyone. Like, whether small or large, everybody notices something that is completely outside what can be explained without a spiritual belief. For instance, and I'm reading the comments here. For instance, Jesus didn't create a religion, but a faith. Religion is what killed him. I would agree there. He was very adamant about not worshiping him, and always creating it about something larger, or something inner. And inner doesn't mean, oh, I worship myself as a god. When you hear people or spiritual people or even gurus and whatever, my interpretation of the Bible when I read it, my interpretation of the Quran when I read it, my interpretation of any religious text when I read it is much different from the way that anybody else reads it, but it ultimately speaks the same truth because it's pointing within, and within is the only place where you can connect with a higher power or anything spiritual. You have to find, that's an inner discovery, right? That's something that nobody can tell you. It doesn't matter how, like, if I sit here and I am an avid member of Islam, and I love Islam, by the way. I have so many great friends that are practicing Muslims, and I have so many great friends of all religions, by the way. But if I truly believe in what I'm saying, and I tell you, and I have all these examples, it doesn't matter how much I tell you that this is the truth. It has to be discovered for yourself. It's something that you can only figure out by listening to your own inner self, which I call heart, which is center. That's when all the perspectives are blocked out. You're not focusing on just what the world's telling you. You're actually recognizing something that's happening inside of yourself, and you realize that you're the one that's recognizing that. That in itself is a spiritual experience. It makes you feel larger than you truly are when you make that realization. How's it going, Oki? Service to others is all the religion you need. I totally respect that. Service to others is great. It if you see others as no different from you, and you realize that on the inside that person is just like you, despite the way that they're perceiving the world, then serving them is serving yourself. Anybody listening right now, anybody watching, feel free to comment, join the conversation, start a conversation, throw something controversial. Man, if you are disagreeing, throw it in here. Rip me a new one, man. I am not afraid of the truth. I have had my ego humbled so many times, it's ridiculous. I've had to completely swallow my pride a million times, man. So this, if this platform is anything anymore with where it was with Tyranny Unmasked, what it might be with Cultivate Hearts, is it's here for us to talk and to feel completely open to talk about anything. Because I mean that is the groundwork that was laid with all these conversations in the past, and the research and documentation was to say, hey, why can't we talk about things? You have not researched flat earth yet, Nexus. I remember when flat earth first came out, and not first came out, because obviously that's been a concept for a very long time, right? But I remember in 2015 when it first came, it just all of a sudden overnight became a massive thing. Flat earth was big. If you didn't believe in flat earth, you were now on the outside of the underground, or the what was the name? Alternative views. If you didn't believe that, you were all of a sudden just invalidated. Anything you had to say was no good anymore. And we had a influx of bots. So that in itself initiated my conspiratorial mind, and I did do a lot of research into flat earth. And because I was still fairly rigid in the way that I perceived science and the world and outside the solar system and all of these things that I can't possibly prove, because I don't have the means to prove them physically. I can only go on concepts and other people's research and evidence. Um, it really threw me off, but I do like the idea of flat Earth in the sense not necessarily explaining the physical world, because I think that model can improve in that sense, explaining the physical world. Because if it doesn't, then there's a vast majority of people that will never even give it an ear. But it explains the physical, not the physical. It explains the spiritual nature very well, and that's something that I had a realization of, an inner vision of, on a psychedelic trip when I took a psilocybin mushroom. Uh, I think it was like 3.5 grams, which is a decent dose. And I'm not telling you to do this. Don't look at this as consent. This is just my experience. But when I did that, I had this change of perspective, because what psilocybin does is it allows your brain to now think outside of its normal pathways. It's firing off all those neurons, if you want to look at it scientifically, and allows you to think differently. I was able to perceive myself from an external point of view, maybe close to what you would consider in a near death experience, where you're not so locked into this physical reality, but now you're able to see things um, externally. And the way that I was seeing it, I was seeing how reality was this linear plane, but it was spreading out from the top and the bottom, and it came to a point, and what it looked like was magnetic fields. And because I had researched plasma cosmology and the electric universe theory, that provided me a mental context to see and understand what I was seeing. I was like, yes, this is like the polarity of reality, the positive, the negative, the yin yang, you have red and blue, and it's creating this nonstop, ever existing polarity, and we're at the center of it. And I saw it that way, and it really did look flat when I saw it that way. It's like, if there is no time, spiritually speaking, if there is no duality, spiritually speaking, then everything could be accessed from this plane. It can just be accessed. But once we get to the physical, things start to get a little bit tricky, and you have to deal with the concept of reality, not reality, but gravity, which I most accurately understand as dielectric acceleration and deceleration to a centralized point. And you can look at magnets. There's a channel called Theory of Aposis or something like that, but it's a guy named Ken Wheeler, and he wrote a book on magnetism. He's continuing to add information to it, and that was his passion, his obsession. And it offers you a new context to understand what reality really is. If you just use a simple thing such as a magnet, and I actually have a magnetic viewer that I purchased from Ken, and it's a really simple concept. It just has a magnetic ferrofluid between two optic lenses, and you wrap lights around it, and you take a magnet, and this light is shining through the ferrofluid, and you bring the magnet up to the ferrofluid, and it shows you the magnetic field. But when you see the magnetic field, then you get to see how it bends light, and it's bending reality, and it is pulling everything to its center. And then if you apply that to, let's say, spiritual art, and this can be seen in every single religion's art through history. It doesn't matter if it's ancient Christians or ancient Islam, or Islam in general. The culture surrounded Hinduism. Hinduism's not a religion; it's a culture. Um, because there's so many different branches of religions and whatnot. Once you get to the East, it's a little bit different than Western religions and beliefs. It's nobody wants to say this is what the religion is. This is what we believe. It's more like everybody's offering up their way of looking at the world. But anyway, getting back to the original point, because I can get off center really easy, is that a magnet it shows you how everything starts to align up like geometry. You see the sacred geometry, and that's why you have the Freemasons were completely obsessed with it and basically worshipped it, and kind of got detached from social reality. But you start to see the thing that everybody is seeing, the underlying truth, reality behind all religions and all, because I do truly believe if there is a God, there's only one God, because that truth can be witnessed and observed. That's the only like, if there's God, you can witness God, right? It's something you have to witness and see, and not only believe. It's not a belief at that point, it's something that you're experiencing. So I'm going to read these comments because I know I just kind of got off on my own thoughts there for a second. So, okay, Nexus says the heliocentric model is just wrong. You can't have a pressurized system Earth next to a vacuum space without a barrier. That's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics. So yeah, I don't see space as a vacuum either way. Like, I'm not saying either model is wrong or right at this point, because that would also be a hypocrisy of my own understanding. But I do believe that if space exists in the way that we even traditionally believe space, that it's not a vacuum. And I believe that there's plenty of evidence out there to prove that. Again, look at the electric universe theory or plasma cosmology. It definitively debunks the traditional model of space as this vacuum. It just doesn't work. There has to be a medium in which things are experienced. There has to be something there, right? There has to be something physical. So and also it's interesting that plasma is an excellent conductor of electricity, which is what fuels life. Everything is electric and magnetic, and it pushes and pulls, and we barely even understand what electricity is. We have a very basic and there is no explanation to what magnets is. That's Ken Wheeler's entire subject matter. He can just rip it to shreds because nobody can tell you what a magnet is. They can tell you what a magnet does, but they cannot tell you why it does what it does, or what it is, or what it truly is doing. It's a mystery still. People can like read you off the definition but not prove to you what it is. So real religion is this is what Snick is saying. Real religion is an individual and scientific thing. Move within with no beliefs. Just watch witnessing. Sorry, I'm getting tongue twisted. No distractions in form of knowledge. Only direct experience counts, where truth, God is found. I'm assuming is what you're going to say there, or God is fine. But yeah, man, it is an individual experience, and the thing is religion, or your belief system, your inner belief system, is just you, the thing that wakes up inside of you every single morning and then goes to sleep and then wakes back up, and you still are Joe or Tom or Sarah every day. You still experience the world through that lens every single day. You need something that ties that all together and explains it, and that's what that is. And that is, it's a combination of both spiritual and scientific belief systems, because we live in a dualistic society where we rip everything into left and right. We can see that in that was my whole thing that I was ripping to shreds for years, was the political system is completely dualistic and never going to work in the form that it currently is in, and we're seeing it die. It's just become a show and a joke, completely irrelevant to reality at this point, because it really doesn't matter. The same tyrannies have been happening no matter who's in charge of our so-called country. I think that's more of like uh, the leaders and people in power are more so fearful of how people will act when they realize that they are the ones that have the power and not a system of governance above them. That is the real fear. That's the only reason that we have this conceptualization of leadership at all right now. Like, people are realizing that they have power within themselves to act, and that's scary, scary, scary. If you like power and don't want to lose it, or you're scared of what people will do with their power because they've looked at the history and they're like, oh no, we have the what happened in France where all, like, revolution is something that's glorified, but at the same time revolution is usually bloody, and without that leadership in our past history, it's been rather rough. But if you look at things in terms of a longer span of time, rather than just focusing on what's happening right in front of your face, you can trust people. People are good fundamentally, as long as things are relatively peaceful. So you can't really blame leadership from being scared, but at the same time, man, we have to grow up as conscious individuals and realize that, you know leadership falls on everyone. It's an everybody thing. It's not a, oh, let's install Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin, and because he's a bad motherfucker that can do things that I want him to do, everything will be okay. That's like saying that, oh, dad's got it. We're good. Dad's got it. I understand the concept. I really do. But self-empowerment is a great thing. All right, Dan says conspiracy theories as a form of entertainment and kind of modern distraction by controlled truthers. Yeah, whether they're controlled or not, if it's not relevant to your life and your experience, if you're just every day looking at videos about the moon landing as a hoax, even if it's 100% a hoax, which I think it is a hoax, then it's not. Is it really adding any value? Is it making your life less miserable? Are you enjoying things better? Are you seeing growth in your reality? Are you fixing problems that are arising in your everyday life? And you know what you see what I'm pointing at there? So yeah, Dan, it's either way. If someone's paying them to distract them, which we've pointed out and proven in the past, it's something that happens. People have agendas and they conspire. That's what conspiracy is to begin with. But where is it relevant? Can we enact change on it? That's this thing that like what I thought was super important at the time, which I think it was relevant at the time. It became not so relevant as I grew and I continued to learn myself. I'm like, okay, I put that knowledge out there. Can other people add to it or continue to expand on it? And it's there to be used. But if I every day I get on YouTube and I make a video about how the Zionists are killing the Palestinians, if I'm not actually doing something that's enacting change, then really I'm using that hardship and that sad truth as a distraction from the falling apart that happens in my own life. And I see my family and other things falling apart because I'm not giving my heart and my soul to them. So yeah, that's a big thing. And it's something that I've had to face and look in the mirror about, and realize when and when not it's important to put my focus on other conspiracies. So Stagel says There is also no definition of gravity. The word that globers use to explain everything impossible with the globe model, also time, is undefinable as well. I'm not in disagreement there. I'm not a flat earther. I'm not a global globe tard or whatever flat earthers call them. Actually, I have many best friends, and I hate saying best friend because best friend is relative to the time, because like this year somebody might be your best friend, the next year they it doesn't matter. But I have a best friend who is very much a flat earther, and we have conversations about it all the time. And I see that point of view. I see it, and if it works in your life and it explains enough truth to you, and you can navigate your life in that way, then hell yeah, dude, it works for you. You don't need me to validate it for you. You don't need me to be a flat earther or a globetard to validate you. If it validates you, it validates you. Story ends there until it doesn't. Once information enters your heart though, and it says, okay, this isn't working for me, then listen to that. But if it's in your heart, then it works for you, dude. Sonic says, I feel like all of us reality junkies. I don't know what that means, but I like it. I like the word. Excuse me. I'm getting a little bit parched here. As Matt puts it, should stay in touch with each other and just deal with life in the happiest possible way. Yeah, man. It is good to build community. That's why I'm talking here. Like I enjoy these talks. I enjoy being able for people to bring up their concerns and to bring up things that are important, and we can get it out on the table and we can all talk about it. It's not about one person or the other. It's about what our culture can build together, because we all rely on each other. We have been segmented and put into ironically ghettos in our little houses in a if you're not in the upper echelons of money making in this reality, you are being ghettoized, and you're being put on a grid and pumped with EMF, pumped with shitty food, treated like livestock and traded on markets. So I mean, really, the only way to improve that culture is to focus on that culture and to improve it. That's what I'm experiencing. I am on the lower end of money. That's why it means shit to me. It makes me sad when I see people being treated like cattle. So yeah, it's good. It is very good. Very good, friends. I'm gonna take a drink here, but anyone else, bring it up. Let's talk about it. Let's stir the pot. Let's get it out on the table. Anything you know about, any concerns you want to talk about, aliens or the invasion of Iran that will happen because of aliens. Let's go. It can be anything. I'm just saying that because I've been seeing people have been messaging me about that. About like, you see what the government's saying? I'm like, it's just it's all distraction, man. I was talking about that in 2017. In 2019, I was like, there's a strange correlation with UFO sightings and extraterrestrial things, and there's a uncanny correlation with that and political groups that were also a part of false flags and in all of these different events and large scale invasions of countries. It just so happens to coexist. I don't know if that was my conspiracy mind making those connections or what, but it's a connection that existed. Stagel says, I drank psychedelic shrooms today. It was nice. I'm just a free thinker, not a flatter or a globe head. I'm staying open to new ideas. Well, I'm right there with you, dude. I also partake. I was like hesitant to admit to it, even though I've already talked about it on the stream. I also partake of said shrooms. they're becoming more accepted and legalized in our society, legalized as if we need legal to justify our actions. We're adults. But I do like consciousness expanding opportunities. I like to see things through a lens that I wouldn't have seen if I hadn't been open to having my point of view blasted. It it is something that leads often to ego death, which means that you how you perceive the world as Dan or Stagel or Sonic, it for an hour or two you only perceive reality as everything that's coming in, and you're just a receiver of consciousness, and so you don't have a bias either way. You just see things, and then afterwards, then you're back in Dan, you're back in Stagel, or whoever you are, and then you're like, oh wow, all that information that I just perceived, I normally would have not even seen it had I not, given it a chance. Those alien videos are definitely fake, he says. They probably are. I haven't even seen them, but I just know that that's within the subculture right now. That's one of the things that people are talking about. I had a conversation with my friend yesterday saying it's hilarious that back in like 2012-ish era, that was one of the main things I gave a fuck about, and the reason is because I was observing orbs. I'm like, what are these orbs in the sky? I was filming orbs. I was sharing videos online of orbs, and I was in UFO forums and looking for an answer and looking up the government's hiding the truth thing from me. But even still, I can't explain what I was seeing. I just knew that it defied logic and defied reality for me. So it forced me to question reality. So it's crazy that, your government comes out and it's like, oh yeah, that's all real, and we shot down UFOs and we found bodies that were not human, and it doesn't even faze me. It really doesn't faze me because I know that everything that our government's saying, it really doesn't even matter. It doesn't hold volition. They don't really say things that would change up the paradigm. They're terrified of the paradigm changing. It's all about controlling the current narrative, and if they're speaking openly about it, it's benefiting them. I mean, even with, like, we're talking about shrooms and psychedelics a minute ago, we have to be careful with that. Not that plant medicine that's been a thing in our culture forever. It's there. You can dig in the culture and you see that it's a practice that has been a part of every culture and every religion. It's just something that governments like to control because, they want to be in control. They don't want a plant to dictate how we believe or expansion of consciousness. They want the narrative, whatever keeps you in your head and your mind all the time and outside of your heart, to control that. So we have to be careful because we have, unnatural substitutes to these substances like Delta 8 and all these synthesized versions of the originals that strip it of its psychedelic properties. It's like, okay, you can have it, you can get high, you can be you can get the addictive side of it, but we're going to try to keep all the beneficial parts of that completely out of it. So just be aware of that. That's something that we should be aware of, is that when our government is like, all right, we'll legalize it, but every time you hear the but from them, that's when you need to pump the brakes, and any illusory freedom they give you, enact your willpower upon it, and don't be afraid to bend the rules. I mean, you have a life and you're not going to live forever, so don't feel like you can't uh you know bend the rules a little bit, because as we found out, rules are tyrannical a lot of the time. They cap your experience. I'm not saying put yourself in danger or unnecessary risk, but rules are not really rules. Boxes don't exist. Boundaries don't exist. Those are inner, set within. That's between you and God, kind of thing. Sonic said those are some normies who even question that government's confirming aliens. Stagel says, I saw orbs too, flying next to a helicopter in Los Angeles. You know, what's interesting here in Texas, when I went to school, I would sit during lunch and eat my lunch outside on a bench. And as I was doing that, I would sit up and watch the birds, the clouds, the planes flying over, and I would notice consecutively, it was weeks at a time, I was seeing these planes, and then I would see little orbs show up. They would just show up and fly behind the planes, to the sides of the planes, and they would fly past the planes. I'm like, what am I witnessing? I have to make this fit into my understanding of my reality. So it's very understandable if you go down that rabbit hole trying to figure out what are the orbs. I still don't know. I literally do not know. And I've seen many of orbs, and I've seen them, like I said, with the planes, and I've seen them. I think the closest I've seen them was probably half a football field away, 50 yards or less. And I was so close to it that, and this is a good one, I was so close to it that I could see this plasma structure emanating around it, and it looked like a flowing lava or a plasma lava lamp type of thing. And it was bubbling like that, and it was flying across the sky, and it had a little blinking light, just like an FAA light. And I'm like, what the fuck? My brain can't comprehend that. Because not only does this imply impossible technology to me at the time, and this is something I've observed and videoed, by the way. Here's the puppy. Sorry if you hear sounds, if she starts barking. But we might actually wrap the stream up here pretty soon. But concluding my little UFO alien story, I saw these orbs. And that in itself is what led me to plasma cosmology and the electric universe theory, because that was the only thing that can even remotely explain the technology I was seeing. Is that, I don't know, something that can just navigate soundlessly, but then also flash like FAA. It's a very confusing thing to try to figure out as a young adult. DMT, we're talking about 5-MeO DMT is what Snick's talking about. From Colorado, Toad. It's a real 5-MeO is. I've not done 5-MeO, by the way. I've not, but I've heard the stories, and I can only imagine, because I've done ayahuasca, which is the natural way of doing it, where you take something like Syrian rue and the ayahuasca vine, and you combine them together. And because of combining the root with that, it allows your stomach to absorb the DMT, and then you have a prolonged psychedelic experience. And I did shrooms before and after those experiences, and other like LSD and other psychedelics as well. And it's still no comparison. There really is no comparison, because that one completely, DMT shatters your reality, completely does it. It will make, you'll stare at the wall, and the wall itself will just become this completely other reality. You're watching the universe unfold on your wall. It doesn't matter what you're looking at. Everything ends up ultimately looking like your inner visions. It's a crazy experience, and I'd put it on your bucket list to do the brew. It's not comfortable, by the way. It's not comfortable. Don't do it for fun. Do it if you're wanting to see reality completely different from the norm, and expand your consciousness. The Great Hadoken, great name, by the way. I saw a UFO once, nothing special, just a light that followed me for about 10 miles before shooting upwards into the infinite black. You know, it really does make you question, like, what are these orbs? Not just UFOs, not flying saucers, not just crash government craft kind of bullshit, but what are these lights? These lights that will just appear, and will witness them. And then it makes you look at the spiritual stories of angels, and you look at historical information, and it really does. It makes you think. It makes you ponder deeply. And again, no answer. I looked for that answer, still looking for that answer, and I guess we'll have to find out together what that one is. You also said, I'm pretty straight when it comes to my beliefs on these sorts of things, but I know what I saw that night. Exactly. It's something that stopped you and you had to say, "What the heck am I witnessing? What is this?" And that's what this channel was all about. Not necessarily UFOs. That was, an underlying theme, but it was about breaking down reality and saying, "Wait, is Google telling me the truth?" Not just Google, but you get what I'm pointing at. Is what we're being fed and told to accept true, or can we actually use our own inner knowledge and intuition? Can we actually break this thing down? But yeah, guys, I'm gonna wrap this up for now. It looks like the congruent viewership is going down anyway, but I just wanted to hop on here and talk. I don't know. I don't know why. I just felt like was supposed to talk to some people today, and hopefully you guys got something from it. Maybe you, uh, got to dump something out. I felt like we had a productive conversation. For how long did we do this for? Do I have a time? Oh yeah, we're almost at an hour. Hey, that's an hour, baby. That's an hour that hasn't been on the channel for a while because I haven't felt it. It wasn't in my heart. I felt like there was more important things to do. But we'll see. We'll see if this continues to be a theme, and if so, we'll meet up again and we'll talk and we'll see what's important. All right, guys. You guys have a wonderful day. I'm gonna go hang out with my best friends and enjoy life. Peace.